What if I told you the Blue Jays are about to shake things up in a way nobody sees coming? The front office has been making moves, sure, but the real story isn't what they've already done. It's what's about to happen next. Look, Toronto has brought in Dylan Cease, Cody Ponce, and Tyler Rogers through free agency. They grabbed Chase Lee from Detroit without giving up much at all. But here's the thing everyone's missing. These moves are just setting the stage. The Blue Jays aren't done. Not even close. And if they want to make the kind of splash that actually puts them over the top, they're going to have to trade away some pieces that fans aren't ready to lose. Let's talk about what's really going on here. The trade market is where championships get built, and Toronto knows it. They've dipped their toes in, but to land the difference makers they need, they're going to have to part with players who still have value. Not just spare parts or aging veterans, but guys who can actually help other teams win. That's how you get quality back in return. So who's on the chopping block? Let's start with the most obvious one that nobody wants to admit. Joey Loperfido. Yeah, the same guy who looked absolutely electric when he finally got his chance last season. Think about this for a second. He came over in the Yusei Kikuchi trade, showed up and hit .333 with an .879 OPS. 4 homers, 14 RBIs in just 96 at-bats. Those aren't fluky numbers. That's a guy who can produce when given the opportunity. But here's the brutal reality. Anthony Santander is healthy. George Springer isn't going anywhere. Dalton Varsho is locked in. Nathan Lukes and Miles Straw are still around. Then you've got Addison Barger and Davis Schneider, who can play multiple positions, including the outfield. Do the math. There's no room for Loperfido, and that's not his fault. The guy proved he belongs in the majors, but the Blue Jays have a traffic jam in the outfield that would make rush hour in downtown Toronto look like a country road. What happens to talented players stuck behind a logjam? They waste away in the minors or ride the bench at the major league level, watching their skills deteriorate. Toronto can't afford to let that happen, not when they could flip him to a team desperate for outfield help and get back something they actually need. Maybe it's bullpen depth, maybe it's a utility infielder who can actually hit, or maybe it's packaging him with someone else to land a bigger fish. Whatever it is, Loperfido's days in Toronto are numbered, and both sides know it. Now let's talk about the tough one, Ricky Tiedemann. Remember when this kid was supposed to be the future ace of the Blue Jays rotation? His 2022 debut was electric. Everyone in the organization was buzzing about him. Fast forward to now, and he's coming off Tommy John surgery that wiped out his entire 2025 season. He didn't throw a single competitive pitch. Here's where it gets complicated. Tiedemann still has that sky-high potential. He's still technically the top pitching prospect in the system now that Trey Yesavage has basically graduated to the majors. But potential doesn't win games, and the Blue Jays are in win-now mode. They can't afford to wait around hoping Tiedemann comes back at full strength and develops into what everyone thought he could be. Other teams, though, they can afford to wait. Rebuilding clubs looking 3 or 4 years down the line would absolutely jump at the chance to grab Tiedemann, and that's exactly why Toronto needs to consider moving him. If the Blue Jays want to land someone like Mason Miller or Ketel Marte, names that have been floating around in trade rumors, they're going to need to offer up premium prospects. Teams aren't giving away all-star caliber players for lottery tickets. They want proven commodities or high-ceiling prospects who can help them rebuild. Tiedemann fits that profile perfectly. Jojo Parker and Arjun Nimala are still too far away from the majors to be attractive in trade talks. Yesavage is clearly untouchable at this point. That leaves Tiedemann as the guy other teams will ask about first. It's a tough pill to swallow for Blue Jays fans who've been dreaming about a homegrown ace, but sometimes you have to sacrifice the future to win now. That's the business. And then there's José Berríos. Oh boy, where do we even start with this one? This situation has drama written all over it, and it's been brewing for months. Berrios has been a workhorse for Toronto ever since they traded for him from Minnesota back in 2021. He's eaten innings, he's been reliable, and he's been a veteran presence in that rotation. But something broke last season, and it might not be fixable. Let's rewind to how his 2025 ended. Over his final 10 starts, Berrios was getting absolutely shelled. A 4.81 ERA, 1.42 WHIP, giving up 34 runs and 10 homers in less than 49 innings. Those are replacement-level numbers. The Blue Jays made the call to move him to the bullpen, which is a pretty clear vote of no confidence from the coaching staff and front office. And how did Berrios respond? He didn't take it well. That's putting it mildly. The guy was upset, and rightfully so from his perspective. He's been a starter his entire career. Being told you're now a reliever, especially during a playoff push, that's a gut punch. But here's where it gets messy. Berrios essentially disappeared from the team during their World Series run. He stepped away from the clubhouse. Whether you want to call that unprofessional or understandable frustration, it happened. And now there's this cloud hanging over his relationship with the organization. Fast forward to this offseason, Toronto added Cody Ponce to the rotation. Depending on how things shake out, Berrios might actually have to compete for a spot in the starting five. Let that sink in. A guy who's been a lock for the rotation for years might have to battle just to start games. He's not going to accept a bullpen role long term. That's clear. So what's the solution? Trade him. It's actually a win-win if Toronto handles it right. Berrios gets to go somewhere that values him as a starter and needs his innings. The Blue Jays get assets back that can help them right now, whether that's prospect depth or major league-ready talent. Both sides move on without the awkwardness and tension hanging over spring training. It makes too much sense not to happen. So there you have it. 3 players who seemed like fixtures in Toronto's plans, now looking like trade candidates. Loperfido can't crack the outfield depth chart despite his talent. Tiedemann is the prospect capital needed to land an impact player. Berrios and the organization need to part ways before things get uglier. The Blue Jays are in a fascinating spot right now. They've made moves to get better, but the real test is whether they're willing to make the hard decisions to truly compete. Spring training is just around the corner, and something's got to give.